Greetings, metalheads, and welcome to No Nonsense Metal Reviews. I'm George, and today I'm back with another new release review. Today's new release, we're tackling album number 13 from one of the biggest metal exports of Sweden. Certainly one of the biggest names in modern sort of heavy metal, power metal, whatever you want to call it. All round very divisive, but in my opinion, very good band. We're talking Hammerfall with Avenge the Fallen. The new album. Very consistent band. They have been producing albums pretty much every couple of years over the last however many years. And Hammerfall are remarkable for so many different reasons. But one of the most remarkable things about Hammerfall is their perseverance and consistency. Their sound has been pretty much set and adhered to for decades now. So Hammerfall, let's backtrack a little bit. Who are Hammerfall? Well, they are a Swedish heavy metal band, power metal band, whatever you want to call them. If it's power metal, then it sits on the much more traditional heavy metal rooted end of the spectrum. There is clearly a lot of Judas Priest stamp and influence in Hammerfall's music, as well as a big influence from the likes of Halloween, for example. You know, one of the pioneering power metal bands. And love them or hate them, Hammerfall have grown over the years, certainly in Europe, to quite a sizable status. And they do get a lot of hate. There is a lot of stick there. Hammerfall really are a Marmite band, it seems, within modern heavy music and heavy metal. People either absolutely love them or they hate them. I happen to really like Hammerfall a lot. I'm a big Hammerfall fan. I got into them in quite a big way, maybe sort of 5-6 years ago. Got totally hooked, and I've got all the albums. I've never had the pleasure of seeing Hammerfall live, but I really would say that Hammerfall are such an underrated band. I think that people hear, maybe the more staunch defenders of more extreme metal or aggressive ends of the metal spectrum, thrash death metal fans, hear the power metal term and recoil in utter disgust and horror. But to be fair to Hammerfall and to a lot of the other bands that are lumped in with this power metal lot, just kind of given that tag, power metal, and just cast into this huge heap of very jolly, very over-the-top bands, it's not really a tag that sticks properly with Hammerfall, as is the case with Primal Fear from Germany, as is the case with even Halloween, to an extent. But whatever you want to call it, Hammerfall play decent heavy metal. It is very uplifting stuff. It is very empowering and quite raucous stuff, but it is really freaking good, in my opinion. As I say, big Hammerfall fan, have been for years. They have been on such a good run recently. And actually, we'll start with that. So, one of the first albums that came out since I got into the band was the 2019 Dominion album, which is an absolute belter. And this is quite a heavy album, to be honest. This is a heavy album for a power metal band. There's the quite strong influence that you can pick up of Judas Priest in there. They also then released a cracking live album, a double live album, I think. Yeah, this is Live Against the World. So this is from the Dominion tour, and it's a lovely package. It's a great show. It's a real good career-spanning performance. All the hits, all the favourites, and also a good helping of tracks from that Dominion album. But then Hammer of Dawn was one that I didn't pick up at the time of release, I must admit. This came out in 2022, but I waited upwards of maybe 6 months for it to actually go down to a more reasonable price. But this album is freaking great. This is heavy Hammerfall. This is good old twin guitars, riff central, soaring vocals. This has all the hallmarks of Hammerfall, but to me, bears a bit more of a traditional heavy metal characteristic in there. It's from this album, Hammer of Dawn, that 2 years later we get Avenge the Fallen, and that is exactly the incarnation of Hammerfall that we're getting now. Although it bears all the hallmarks and characteristics of Hammerfall, being very grand, being very uplifting and vibrant metal, it's also firmly rooted in traditional heavy metal. Whether or not it's power metal or not, to me, it certainly is heavy freaking metal. And it's just really enjoyable, easily palatable, overflowing with hooks, glorious, uplifting metal. So, now that we're up to date with Avenge the Fallen, album number 13, as I say, let's take a closer look at this album. So, in duration, it's about 45 minutes long, and it's 45 minutes of excellent heavy metal. Let's go through our lineup here. Joachim Cans on vocals is an exceptional vocalist. That guy has a great voice. He's got a very clear and clean voice. Great singer, great front man. You just watch the live footage from the Live Against the World Blu-ray in this case, and that's evidence enough. That guy knows how to command a crowd and command a stage, and I think he has a great voice. It's very distinctive. You know, Judas Priest had Rob Halford, Bruce Dickinson of Iron Maiden. Obviously, these are the big famous vocalists. We all know their iconic voice as soon as we hear just a short snippet. Joachim Cans is one of those vocalists as well. Definitely, absolutely. Signature voice. I don't know. It just wouldn't be Hammerfall without his vocals. Definitely not. Then we've got Oscar Droniak on guitars. One of the main men in the band here. One of the main songwriters. In fact, all songs written by Oscar and Joachim. Fantastic axeman. Absolutely brilliant shredder. Phenomenal guitarist. Again, you see that live footage. That guy knows his way around a fretboard, that's for sure. And the guitar work throughout this album is exceptional. It's absolutely delightful. It would give Priest a run for their money, I have to say. Then we've got Pontus Norgren on guitars and backing vocals as well. There's plenty of gang sort of choral vocals on any Hammerfall album, to be honest, but certainly on Avenge of the Fallen. Avenge of the Fallen. Then we've got Fredrik Larsson on bass. Great prominent bass tone throughout. You know, you got that nice percussive low end there. Decent stuff, I have to say. And then you've got David Wallin on drums. Killing the kit. Fine drummer, fine performance throughout the album. So that's our lineup. And I will say, it's an adept lineup. Very good musicians. Very good musicianship throughout this album. You know, that is a characteristic trait of heavy metal, traditional heavy metal, is kind of having capable musicians that can work their way around their instruments and make their instruments work for them. And that is what you get here. You know, Judas Priest wouldn't have that iconic status as being one of the pivotal key heavy metal bands if they were sloppy musicians. Let's face it. So yes, good musicians. Very good musicianship and instrumentation across the board. The whole sound of the album is really good. It's really well produced. Very good sound. Very full. Everything's clear. There's no sort of tinniness to anything. It's all sounding great, have to admit. So those tracks then. Avenge the Fallen. The album actually kicks off with the title track, which I will say is a grand, heavy, very heavy. There's some really good riffs there. But it's quite a melodic track in its nature. It's anthemic. It's very Hammerfall, but it's surprisingly short. I have to admit, because it's a very good song, but it almost feels like it finishes, like the opening track just ends a bit too abruptly, considering just how much is involved there. The fact that we've got these really sort of melodic, melancholic almost vocal passages quite early on from Joachim. We've got some great guitar work, some leads and solos in there, these really heavy chugging groovy riffs, and then the song just kind of ends. It just feels a little bit too abrupt for me, but it's still a great way to kick off the album. Then we get The End Justifies, which is an absolute stomper of a track. I love that. That's one of the album highlights for me. I know I keep saying it, but that's a very Hammerfall track. Tons of twin guitar work going on there. It's very, very catchy. Good amount of melodicism there. It's heavy metal. It's heavy Hammerfall. Brilliant. I think one of the things that's really obvious, even from the first few listens, and I have listened to this album since it came out a week ago. I've listened to this album roughly sort of twice, maybe 3 times a day. So we're getting on somewhere between sort of 15 and 20 listens by this point. And I can probably recall every chorus on there. It's so catchy. This is so full of hooks. But The End Justifies is a great track, full of killer guitar work. Love the vocals. Track 3, Freedom. Wow, that is a raucous, rousing track. That is anthemic. Raise your fists, guzzle your beer, bang your head, air guitar, all at once. It's one of them kind of tracks. Certainly gets you moving. Really great track. Very uplifting, as I say. Some really good vocal work from Joachim there. Excellent chorus. As I say, it's full of hooks, but none of it's cheesy at this stage. Anyway, there's one track that I feel is maybe a little bit cheesy, but there's none of that, really. It's just robust, heavy metal. Very catchy. Hail to the King, track number 4, is... I don't want to say it's the ballady track, but it's... No, it's definitely not a ballad. No, that would be totally wrong. It's more of a kind of a mid-pace, mid-tempo track, but it's good. It's got some slower moments in it, but it's also got some great full-on guitar work going on there. It's a really good track. Hero to All is another one of these really uplifting heavy metal tracks. Really like that one. Again, full of hooks. Full of hooks. There really is a lot of consistency on this album, certainly on this first side up to that point. So if we said it to the point of Hero to All, that being our first side, very consistent, really good flow, a good mix of slightly more upper tempo and then mid tempo heavy metal, power metal tracks. Then we get the cheesy track, which is Hope Springs Eternal. That is the closest that Hammerfall at this point and Avenge the Fallen gets to a ballad. It's not a ballad. I wouldn't say it's an outright ballad track, but it is the ballad track. It's that kind of melancholic, a little bit soppy, a little bit more emotive track, but at the same time it's quite uplifting and it's a very good song. It's a nice song. It's a nice Hammerfall song. Not an album highlight for me, definitely not, but I'd say it's a good track. It's maybe my least favourite, but that's probably because the rest of the album is really quite strong. Certainly, I would say that the rest of side B is stronger than the majority of side A. We get Burn It Down, which is a very heavy track. Really, really cracking riffs there. Absolutely love the groovy riffs. Love it. The drumming is absolutely delicious. Freaking great. That's a heavy track. Love it. Capture the Dream. Monster of a chorus there. So freaking catchy. Love it. Then we get Rise of Evil, which is the most sort of ominous or the darkest sounding track on the album. Not that Hammerfall do that many dark sounding or moody tracks. They do tend to be more on the positive, uplifting side. But I love that kind of juxtaposition there of Burn It Down being a very heavy number to Capture the Dream which is, quite an uplifting number, still a really good track, before we get Rise of Evil, which is quite sinister in sound. Very good track though. That's more of a short and sweet heavy metal groove fest. And then we get the closing track, which is the grand closing moment there, Time Immemorial. An interesting number. That is quite a grand one. That's quite a big sounding song, a big kind of building intro piece there. But overall, it's a really solid, an album standout moment. Maybe not my favourite track on the album, but it's certainly one of the better tracks there, or one of the best tracks, I should say. Really strong moment there. A really good way to close out the album. To be honest, it's quite reminiscent of some of the material that we were getting on Hammer of Dawn and Dominion. We're kind of getting that continuity there. And I do think that there is quite a strong continuity between those albums. You could even go back as far as like Built to Last. But that said, start to finish, it's a really strong album. A lot of continuity there, very consistent. Overall, for me, it's a solid sort of 8 out of 10. I'm really digging this album a lot. I think that there's a lot going on here, a lot to enjoy. And as I said at the beginning of this review, it's remarkable just how consistent Hammerfall have been over the years. That they've got such a signature sound and style. But every album does sound fresh. Like, even between those previous two albums, there's a lot of continuity there, but they both sound respectively different. It's very good. And, that's owed to good songwriting and good musical ability. So, Avenge the Fallen, album number 13 from Sweden's heavy metal, power metal kings, the mighty Hammerfall. I would say this is a really, really strong album. It's a strong delivery. Really, there are no bad tracks on this album. I know I feel like I was picking on Hope Springs Eternal a little bit there, but it's just because it's quite a cheesy number. Certainly maybe not in the instrumentation or the musical element of it. Maybe it's just in some of the lyrics and the vocals. But if you're looking for something uplifting and looking for something that you can headbang along to and just enjoy, then Avenge the Fallen is an album that you definitely need to check out. Tracks to check out. I think the intro track there, Avenge the Fallen, is a very solid one. It's very enjoyable. But for me, The Ends Justifies is one of the standout tracks here. Other standouts for me would include Burn It Down, Capture the Dream, and Rise of Evil. Really, really strong. As I say, I love Hammerfall. I love my black metal, death metal, thrash metal. I love the more extreme stuff. But I can also really, really appreciate some good old style heavy metal, but sounding fresh and modern and full of energy and positivity. This is very positive metal overall. So if you're looking for a bit of positivity in your metal for a change, then look no further than Hammerfall with their new album, Avenge the Fallen. So my friends, check out Hammerfall, check out Avenge the Fallen if you haven't already. If you're digging that, do make sure that you check out some of these more recent albums as well and recent releases, especially Hammer of Dawn, which I think is one of the strongest albums for a while. Not to discredit any of these albums or any of the other albums in here. We've got loads of great albums in Hammerfall's catalogue. But what are your thoughts and opinions on Avenge the Fallen and Hammerfall? Interested to hear thoughts and opinions of others as always. Thank you very much for watching, my friends. Do feel free to like, subscribe, share, comment. The support is very much appreciated, as always. Do check back soon for more reviews and recommendations of all those good heavy things. Until next time, take care of yourselves and stay heavy.